Welcome to Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. Today we're going to talk about the ugly bullies. These are the bucks that we've hunted over the years that they were older deer. They were definitely more aggressive. Bucks that we felt like probably were pushing other deer off the farm, but they were not necessarily big antler deer. They were a lot of fun to hunt, and they were an important part of the management on those properties.
Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail, Elevate Tree Stands, B3 Releases and Broadheads, and Hoyt.
I made a list of all of the bucks that we've killed in the last 10-12 years that weren't high-scoring deer. There's a lot of deer on that list. I'd say we've killed as many bucks that were not high-scoring mature deer as what we have, really nice-looking, bucks that people would say, oh, that's a wallmount, or whatever. I mean, these would be deer that a lot of people say, if you're coming to the state of Iowa, these wouldn't be shooters. People say management, but in a lot of cases, those are the only mature bucks that are killable on the farm. And some years we don't really have bigger antlered options. So we end up calling them management bucks, but at the end of the day, what they really are is mature bucks. But we do definitely need to take out as many of these type of deer as possible, because if you don't, they end up becoming the dominant bucks. They don't have the big antlers, so people aren't shooting them, and they get to be maybe 5 or 6 years old in some areas, maybe 3 or 4 years old in other areas. They don't have as much, or that have more hunting pressure. And these become the bucks then that run other deer out of the area that have better antlers. So, this whole discussion of, do you remove them because of their genetics? You don't want their genetics, to be spread. Or do you remove them because they're taking up space that a buck with better genetics, that has better antler potential could occupy? It's really the second one. There's been a lot of testing done and a lot of research into genetics. And in free-ranging herds, it's super hard to change the genetics of the herd by removing a few bucks, because it's just so swamped. And they're so, dispersed. The genetics are so dispersed throughout the herd.
Well, and they're constantly coming in and leaving.
Yeah, and that's why you see those deer farmers that can grow those 400-inch deer. And they'll be 2 years old and they'll score 250 or something ridiculous. Well, nature can't put those kind of deer out because, like I said, like Jordan said, the genetics are so diverse and so swamped that they haven't been like hand-tailored to produce big antlers. Really what they are, probably more than anything else, is just survival. Just the healthier deer, or in some cases, if the environment isn't that demanding, they're just deer. So there's nothing about them that's evolved, over generations of breeding. So anyway, that brings us to the point that these truly aren't what you'd call management deer. What they are is deer that are either the best bucks you've got on the farm, and they're the funnest ones that you're going to have to hunt, or they're just deer that you realize that they're the ugly bullies. They're the ones that they don't have the traits that make them attractive to other hunters, so they live to be a ripe old age.
Mike, I have a question. And then they would probably tend to push out some of those potentially up and coming younger bucks, right?
Yeah.
Just because the older bucks probably tend to be more dominant, and so they get left alone because everyone's like, I don't really want to shoot that guy.
Yeah.
But then you get a super nice 2-year-old that comes in and he just gets ran right off by that big, old, ugly.
And that's why they need to go.
Right.
And they're fun to hunt too. I mean, and again, I look at my list here, and there's probably 10 or 12. I mean, I can think of a couple of them. You killed one in 2012, I think, that we called Krusty. Krusty 1. We had a series of Krusties. We had several bucks over the years that we nicknamed Krusty for apparent reasons that you'll see when you look at the antlers. But these were fun deer to hunt. And some of them we hunted for multiple years. And Jordan killed that one in 2012. I think that was the second year we tried to kill that version of Krusty. He might have been Krusty 2, because I remember at Krusty 1, prior to that we tried to kill for a few years and couldn't get. There was another one in 2012 that I killed, and that was a deer that we called Loppy. We've talked about Loppy a few times, but that deer was the bull of the woods in 2009. You'd swear that, you know, when he did, I mean, he was in charge. Well, by 2012, when I killed him, he was 7 years old, and he might have already been starting to get pushed around a little bit himself by some of the bigger, younger bucks. But
I've got a question, and
Yeah.
maybe it's a little off topic, but say you've got a really nice, really nice buck that you want to hunt, but you also have some of those old crusty guys around. How do you go after that nice one then, or do you get rid of the crusties because you have to?
Well, I mean, ideally, you've got enough options of tags or people or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, the hardest part about trying to kill a certain buck is just the opportunity to kill him.
Right.
Because you might say, "Oh, we're going to go shoot this buck now." Well, you know, good luck. I mean, I've said that many times and spent the whole season and not been able to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
So, normally, what you do is it's hard not to hunt the deer with the bigger antlers.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, because it's just exciting. You get that adrenaline rush when they come in. But I've had almost as much of a rush out of some of these older, smaller antlered bucks. So anyway, coming back around to dominance, the bucks with the bigger antlers aren't necessarily the most dominant. Sort of like people too, you know. It's not always the biggest person that's the one that you got to watch out for.
It's personality more than anything.
Yeah, just aggressiveness. Yeah, and some of them are just really scrappy, and some of them they just avoid a fight. And I think age really is the criteria, you know, that we try to follow. We try not to shoot them based on antler size. We try to shoot them based on how old they are. In some parts of the country, you know, a 2-year-old deer is going to be a trophy. You know, some parts it's 3. I mean, our area, I think legitimately they need to be 5. You know, maybe 4 in most of the Midwest or parts of the Midwest, but age 5, then they're uncommon enough that they become, you know, huntable, but, you know, they're challenging.
And they almost become a trophy based on age alone at that point. Like,
That's
just the fact that they made it that long is, antler size aside,
Yeah.
maybe they're crusty, but 8 years old is a long time
yeah.
for a deer to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's cool about them. And some of my, you know, most favorite bucks that I've hunted, like I said, were some of these old ones. You know, it's kind of funny. Last season, there was a super old buck on the farm, and we called him. We didn't call him Crusty. We called him Scruffy, I think.
Was it the blind one?
Yes.
With like the broken ear?
Yes.
That poor guy.
He had a tiny little rack, and one eye was blind, and the other ear was broken off on the other side. And I happened to mention him to my neighbor, and he just perked up immediately. He was so excited. He said, "I've been trying to kill that deer for 6 years." 6 years.
And for him to be so distinguishable and recognizable, he's just been like scruffing along.
For all those years.
He might be 10.
Yeah, no, that's what he said. My neighbor said for sure he's at least 10. So he was like super excited. He wanted to know where I saw him. And the deer would score like 70 inches. But anyway, the point is, it's not the antler size always that makes the trophy. You know, so you have to get that out of your head. And yeah, I mean, if there's big antler bucks around, they're fun to hunt. And it's super cool to show pictures of them and stuff. But I think it maybe short sells the quality of the overall experience to have the memory, you know, come down to a number. You don't really want to have a score at the end of the day that determines whether or not you had a successful season. So anyway, the ugly bullies should not be, don't call them management deer. They're trophies. Well, let's talk about a couple more of them because we got plenty of footage to show. In 2015, I killed a little short tine buck.
Was he the one that's called short tine?
Yeah.
Oh.
I just jotted that down. 2016, I killed a buck I called Tight Rack because he had a little tight rack. He was pretty cool. He was at least 5. He might have been 6. Let's see. Jordan killed that buck in 12. Drew killed one in, 2014. He was an older deer. He had kind of an interesting, but not large rack. I mean, the list goes on and on, but
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have any, are there any on the farm besides that poor crippled guy?
Yeah.
That you would consider not trophy size wise, but trophy due to the crusty level?
Yeah. There was 2 last year that I was trying to kill. They were both, one was a 9, and he disappeared early in November. I lost track of him. Hopefully he's back. Great big bodied deer. I'm sure he's a bully. doesn't, would score 130s, maybe. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but I mean, in Iowa, that's not a, quote unquote shooter for most people. It would have been for me, for sure. I'd have been very proud of that deer. And then that 10-pointer that I was after, he didn't have big antlers either. We had the sheds from him from 2 years ago. That deer was maybe, I don't know, 140s maybe, something like that. But anyway, the point is, those were like high value targets for me last season. I mean, I was excited about hunting those deer and even, having an opportunity. This year, hopefully we're gonna have the Jordan buck to hunt. He'll be 5, and then those 2 will hopefully still be there. So I don't know if there's a way to wrap a bow around this. I think the main takeaway message is that we don't necessarily hunt them based on their antler size. We really focus as much as we can on age, and then really weigh in the fact that some of these older bucks don't have big antlers, but they're still trophies. Look for us this coming season to be hunting hopefully 3 bucks. The buck that we call the Jordan buck, which I'm gonna start calling it the Bill buck. Those 2 from last year, those are gonna be probably prime targets, that 9 and that 10, plus the Bill buck.
The Bill buck.
Well, we'll wrap it up right here. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And remember to always
Dream big.